first thing I did was order all my parts. The first thing I ordered was this polycarbonate tubing from McMastercard. I don't suggest getting the one I got because it was 8 feet long and the shipping was insane. I also ordered this foam tube that can go inside my lightsaber to help diffuse the light. I got it off of the custom saber shop. Lastly, I got this clear filament to 3D print the blade thread and blade tip. I got this off of Amazon. There's a bunch of electronics that I got from Adafruit, but I'm not going to go over all of them, but all the parts that I use will all be down in the description. I then took my polycarbonate tubing and cut it down to a little bit more than 26.5 inches. This is what worked best for me, but if you have enough lights, you can make it as long or as short as you want. I added clamps to hold the tube in place, but it didn't work out so well. If I could go back in time, I would probably use a bandsaw to cut it instead. I then take the tube and begin sanding it with 180 grit sandpaper. This helps give it like a frosted glass kind of look and helps diffuse the light even better. I then also do a little bit of sanding on the blade tip, which we'll talk about next. I also designed my own lightsaber blade tip and threads. The threads will be able to work with any lightsaber hilt that I designed and just easily screw into it. And the blade tip has been designed to look like the Clone Wars design of the lightsaber blade. There's holes for lights and a slightly bigger hole to hold the foam in place. I'm now lining up the tube and the foam against each other so that I can cut the foam to the perfect length. The foam needs to be slightly shorter than the tube because the tip and the thread make it slightly shorter. I cut it with scissors, but it would probably be easier and get a more clean cut if you did it with a bandsaw. You can actually see that the foam is too long, but that allows me to see the actual spot I should cut it at. I'm now taking some white wrapping paper and rolling the foam tube in it. The white wrapping paper will help diffuse the light even more. We need diffusion because we don't want to see the individual LEDs. There's another solution of getting a LED strip which has more lights per foot, but those are more expensive. I'm taking some normal Scotch tape and taping the wrapping paper to itself. Don't use too much tape in one section or else the tape itself will do some diffusing and you'll have a dull spot on your blade. I had that problem and I can't do much about it unless I were to make a new blade. My wrapping paper wasn't long enough, so I had to use 2 different pieces, which also created a small problem with the tape. actually taking an old Darksaber project that I worked on and using its lights to test out the diffusion. It actually worked really well, and now we could start moving to the next part. I forgot to record this part, but all I did was take some Gorilla Glue and my phone wrapped in wrapping paper and the thread and glue them together. Make sure you have gloves for this part because you do not want to get this stuff on your hands. I'm taking this clear JB Weld and mixing it together so it can start activating. I'm using this popsicle stick to mix it around and then lather it onto the blade thread. Then all I do is put the blade thread into the blade tube, spinning it so that the glue doesn't squeeze out and it spreads out inside the blade tube. All I'm doing is taking this Gorilla Glue, applying it on the blade tip, and then putting it onto the blade itself. I gotta make sure that foam goes inside the smaller circle, and then it goes in. And a little bit of spinning helps to make sure that the glue is all the way around. The foam that I put on the inside was a tiny bit too long, so it kept on pushing the blade tip out. And obviously, I can't hold that forever, so all I did was take some electrical tape, wrap it up, and let it sit overnight. After the glue had dried, I just did a little bit of sanding to clean up some of the glue residue that had gotten on the tube. Now we're going to move to the insides of the blade, which is the lights and the wiring. The first thing I do is I unroll my roll of lights. I then take a measuring tape and measure 27 inches and mark it on the outside of my light strip. One blade needs 2 light strips, one for each side. I use a pair of cutters that I got with my CR10, and then a pair of scissors to cut through the actual light strip. I'm also removing these little plastic covers off of the light strip, so I just have the actual light strip. These are the 2 strips I will be using for my blade. Make sure that they are the same length. Now it's time for the separator. This will go in between both light strips and stopping them from connecting with each other. This will be the same width and length of our light strips. The light strips I'm using are about 5 millimeters wide, and they'll be as long as you decide to make your blade. I'm using some of this poster board as it is non-conductive. It's also very cheap and you don't need much of it, and you can find it at almost any office supply store. You can see me using scissors here, but I actually changed my mind and decided to use an X-Acto knife to get a more straight cut. I don't have any footage for this next part, but I can explain it pretty good. What I did was I took some double-sided tape and stuck it to the back of the light strip. I then stuck the other side of the tape to the strip of poster board. I kept on doing that all the way down the strip. Then the other side, I then wrapped the normal tape around the double-sided strip, making sure not to cover up any of the actual LEDs. I'll be honest, this is the first time I actually had to do real soldering on a project all by myself. I did have to redo it after this, and it's only because I got 2 wires flipped, but it did work in the end, and I feel like I can explain what needs to be done pretty well. You need to solder the 2 strips separately. So what I'm doing is I'm doing one side now, and I'm taking these silicone cased wires and soldering them to each of the copper parts. The black wires you see here can be however long you need, just make sure that they can reach wherever your board will be in your lightsaber hilt. If you need extra room, they're very good at folding and bending, which is why I use those specifically. Also, make sure you don't get the wires confused, because it will matter which wire is connected to which copper section. I suggest taking a tester and making sure that your solder is done correctly. This can save you a lot of time in the future. Once you're done one side, I suggest putting on some heat shrink and doing the other side. Next, solder the black wires to the 3-pin JST cable. The plus goes to the red wire, aka the 2 voltage wire. The D goes to the data, aka the white, and the negative goes to the black wire, aka the ground. At this point, you want to solder both strips wires together. So the ground with the ground, the 2 voltage with the 2 voltage, and the data with the data. All I had to do was add a little bit more heat shrink and give it a test, and it was ready to light up. I got a lot of this information from Adafruit's Darksaber project. The link to their instructions for that project will be in the description. Just finished doing all the soldering, and I'm doing a test with one of my old lightsabers. And it all works. So it doesn't go all the way down to the end, because that's how the code is, because this blade is a lot shorter, so it only goes down to that point of the blade. But once I update the code, it should be able to go all the way down to the end. I also just got to put some new heat shrink on, because I had to redo some things, but it's working great. And that is how I made this lightsaber blade. This was my first try fully designing the blade by myself, and I think it turned out really nice. I could have made some improvements, bought some nicer materials, but I feel like for all the work I put in, I feel like I did a really good job. I'll be coming out with 3 videos talking about my process through building my lightsaber hilt. Not this one was just a prototype that I'm using to showcase it. The second video will be showing how I wired all the electronics together, and the third video will be going through all the code and how I will be coding. It'll be a lot nicer than this when I'm done all the coding. So thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this lightsaber. This took way longer than I thought, but as of editing this, I almost have the hilt finished. So keep an eye out for the next video coming soon. And thank you guys for watching.